Good morning, students. We are in for God's mercy in 2024. You're welcome to class today, and I am your literature teacher, Auntie Fortune Igben. And today we are going to be looking at something very, very important in our scheme of work for this first term. Our week one topic says the definition and functions of literature. The definition and functions of literature. Let me take you a little bit behind time. In your junior secondary days, I believe that most of us had contact with storybooks, we had contact with novels and poems, and sometimes we even act plays in church, act drama in our churches. And sometimes when they ask us what is literature, we are bound to say that literature is about reading a novel. Literature is not all about reading a novel. Sometimes we feel that literature is all about reading poems or reciting poems. Literature does not just end in reciting poems, in as much as it incorporates all of these, but that is not all about literature. And that is why today we are looking at the definition, and we will step also into the functions of literature. So let's get into this journey. What can we define literature to be? Literature, as we see on the board there, can be defined as the imitation of human experiences in the society. Literature can be defined as the imitation of human experiences in the society. So what do I mean by imitation of human experiences in the society? Now, when we talk about imitation, it means that literature looks at what is happening in the society and presents it to the reader. Anytime you have a contact with your literary text, either the prose, the play, the poetry, is always talking about what is happening in the society. Now, let's take a step forward. Literature can also be said to be the mirror of society. It can be said to be the mirror of society. Take that down. I have a mirror with me in class today, and this is my mirror, as you can see. And when we say literature is the mirror of the society, let's take, for instance, what do we use the mirror for? We use it to look at our faces, isn't it? And whenever you look at your face, as I'm looking at mine right now, I'm sure you have yours with you, you see your image right there in the mirror. So what does literature do? Literature mirrors the society. When you look into your literary text, or you look into your short story, your novel, your play, or your poetry, what you get is what is happening in the society. It reflects all the happenings, man's experiences in the society. Now, what are man's experiences in the society? Man experiences birth. Man experiences death. Man experiences poverty. Man experiences wealth. Man experiences bad leaders, bad, corruption, bad governance. And yes, let's not forget, man also experiences fuel scarcity. Okay, I want to believe that you are following the class today. So that's our first definition, that literature is the imitation of human experiences in the society. And I have mentioned the human experiences that literature mirrors. Now let's take a step further. We have a second definition right there on the board. It can also be seen as the verbal and non-verbal representation of man's positive and negative experiences and actions in the society. This definition is a bit long, but I'm going to explain what I mean by this. I said it can also be seen as the verbal, okay? Let's take note of this word, verbal and non-verbal, okay, representation of man's positive and negative experiences and actions in the society. Now, literature can be verbalized. Literature can also be non-verbal. So it is not every time that literature is verbal. There are times when it is non-verbal. For example, we have our novels, we have our short stories. Those ones are actually written down. Your storybooks are written down. But when you want to look at a work of poetry, for instance, when we say twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder, you are verbalizing it. There is no how you're going to read poetry without verbalizing it. Why? Because you have to be in the mood of the poet. You have to feel the tone of the poet. You have to feel the rhythm, that the poet wants to portray. And so that explains the concept of the fact that literature can be verbal and non-verbal. Now, let's look at representation of man's positive and negative experiences. You will agree with me that it's not every time that the bed is rosy. It's not every time that, we have lemonades. There are times when we also have lemons. There are times when man experiences bitterness, and there are times when there are a lot of joys, and good moments also. And so literature mirrors all of that, all of man's experiences in his society. All right, I want to believe that is clear to every one of us. If you have questions, please put it down, and you have opportunity to send it across when the class is done. Let's take a step further and look at the functions of literature. The functions of literature. Sometimes people would ask, why are we studying literature? Why are we in this class reading literature in ss1? Literature is very, very, very important. Yes, it is. Now, the very first one I have there is that one with functions of literature is for education. For education. See, whenever we read literary text, we are being educated. You know, in your literary text, you are able to read about the traditions, the culture of other people in different parts of the world. I can actually just take a literary text and I'm on my chair in the house, you know, and I'm reading maybe, let's say, African-American literature. Am I in any of the Afro-American countries? No. But right in my nation, right in my house in Nigeria, I've already traveled, you know, into the world of the novelist or into the world of the playwright or the poet. And so literature, you know, one of the functions is that it is for education. It educates us. It makes us to understand what is happening. Now, let's take, for instance, now, a writer can present different characters, okay? Different characters in his novel. Now, we are able to see the positive side of certain characters, and we are also able to see the negative sides of other characters, and we are able to choose who we want to be. And so literature has a tendency to educate us. All right, let's take a step further. Literature is also for information, okay? Another function of literature is that it informs us. How does literature inform us? A wise man once said something that I took note of. He said, when you are not informed, you are deformed. When you are not informed, you are deformed. Now, somebody that is watching me in class today, I want you to take note of that figure of speech. Yes, because I know you did figure of speech in your junior secondary. I know that is a paradox, but I want you to throw more light on what that statement means. If you are not informed, you are deformed. But on my angle here, I'll tell you that when you are not informed, you have lapses in certain areas of your life. If you are not able to cook, okay, you will discover that you keep going out to look for food. And one day you might buy something that is not actually good with your system. And so you need to be informed in that area of cooking so that you are not deformed and you are not affected negatively. So one thing that literature does is that it informs us. Informs us, tells us what is happening in our society. Most of us don't go out to town to know what is going on. But when we read text, works of literature, we're able to understand what's going on within our society and even outside our society. So that's very, 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 very key for literature. And finally for today, literature entertains us. We study literature for entertainment. I know some of us watch comedy. When you're watching comedy, don't you know that's literature? That's literature for you. You know, we have poems that are very humorous, and we also have characters in our plays who are very humorous. We have clowns. And sometimes, even if you are not in a good mood, and you take a good piece of literary text, and you begin to read, you discover that it has a tendency to switch your mood from a sad moment to a happy moment. So that is another function of literature. Literature tends to entertain us. And so I have looked at the definition of literature. If you can look at the board, you can see the definitions there. And I've also looked at 3 functions of literature: that it educates, it informs, and it entertains us. All right, there is something for us to take home today in our class, because it's our first class. I would want you to define literature, not in the way I defined, in your own, using your own definition, in your own terminology. Do a definition of literature, I would like to say. And secondly, I want you to briefly explain the meaning of satire. Take a step further and do a little research. What do you think is satire? Briefly explain the meaning of satire. And so students, we are going to end it in class today. Until I come your way again in our second class, have a wonderful time. And for me, it's bye-bye.